How's it going, everyone? It's been a strange year, but even in all this strangeness and chaos and global pandemics, threats of World War III, a local earthquake that happened, there was one really cool thing that I did back in May. And I bought something for myself that I wanted for a while, and that was a motorcycle. I picked myself up a 2019 Honda CB500X. A while back, I watched a video on Vagabrothers YouTube channel of them traveling up the California coast on their motorcycles. Then I found On Her Bike and watched her adventures across the world. And I discovered Itchy Boots, which was one of my favorite channels. It still is one of my favorite motorcycling channels, just because having that kind of adventure on just a motorcycle is incredible. So I kind of got this urge to buy one myself. So I did. And I figured, well, I'm in no way ready to take on a globe-trotting adventure on a motorcycle. I thought, I'd start off with something a little bit more local. So last month, I decided to ride my bike out to a place that, despite living in Utah for 15 years, I haven't really visited before. Yet it carries a very historic significance to this part of America, to the Wild West, basically, to the West. And that was the Golden Spike National Historic Park. Now this is the spot where two railroad companies came together. It was the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific Railroad. They came together and they completed the Transcontinental Railroad. And they cut down the journey from New York to California from taking about several months to just several days, which is an incredible achievement. So, someone who's a fan of history, I thought, this would be a good place to visit first. So I rode my bike out there. It's only an hour from where I live, not too far. The roads are nice and paved, 2-lane highways, easy riding, no problems getting there whatsoever, as long as you're fine dealing with nothing, because this place is absolutely in the middle of nowhere. The Golden Spike National Historic Park is located in a town called Promontory. Well, at least at one point it used to be a town. Now it's just a visitor center and a couple of railroad lines. And the cool thing about it is they do these reenactments there. They have replicas of the original locomotives that came together on that historic day. However, when I went to visit, just because of all the craziness going on around the world, they didn't have both of them. They just had the one. But it was still really cool to watch it just, do a little loop around the tracks and to see it function and to see it, see the steam coming out of the top, hear the noise, hear the sounds, smell the smells, and just watch this piece of history roll on by, despite it not being the original one. It's cool. It's a really pretty looking replica. After the reenactment, I decided to take some pictures of the train, get some B-roll, and then I decided I wanted to check out these two auto tour routes that they have. I'm right here at the visitor center, and I'm going to try to follow along this route here to this loop and kind of just ride down a little bit. I think a lot of it is unpaved, so I'll just have to see how far I want to go before turning around and heading back. But hopefully I can see some maybe old bits of the railroad and whatever else is left. There was a western auto tour route and an eastern one. I decided to start with the western one just because it kind of made sense, because when I'm heading back home, I'll be heading east. But to get to this auto tour route, it required me to ride on this really loose gravel washboard of a road, which even in a car, I'm not a big fan of. You can feel your car sliding back and forth, and I haven't really ridden my bike off-road, so this was quite a little bit of a white knuckle adventure. Kind of gripping the handlebars, I was a little nervous, you can feel the back end of the bike sliding back and forth a little bit, but eventually I did make it to the start of the Western Auto Tour route. Okay, so this is pretty much as middle of nowhere as it gets, and I rode down this gravel road all the way from the visitor center, and that leads us to this place right here. And this is where the Transcontinental Railroad National Backcountry Byway begins. And what it is, it's a road that basically goes all the way west, all the way to the Nevada border, and then further west. And what it does is it follows the old Union Pacific Railroad line, the Central Pacific Railroad line, basically as far as it'll go. And definitely not going to ride that today. It's a pretty long route. It goes for quite a while before you even hit pavement or any access to a paved road, so I don't feel like I'm quite ready to take on that kind of a trip yet, considering I, one, don't have a whole lot of experience in riding off-road on the motorcycle, and two, I don't think I'm adequately supplied or equipped to go on a longer journey like that. But it would be really cool to come out here one time, whether it's on a bike or in the Jeep with a group of friends, and kind of drive along this route to see if you can spot any old, cool, historical things. Anyways, so this is where that road begins. I'm gonna try and go on this West Auto Tour route. It is also a gravel road, but it loops back around to the visitor center. So hopefully, maybe I'll see something interesting. So far, this has been quite the empty landscape. There's not too much to see, and there's not much really going on around here. But if you're a fan of the desert, this is a perfect place for you. Anyways, so I'm gonna head back, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. Riding on the West Auto Tour route that is circling back to the visitor center. And what's really nice about this route here, this little trail, is that not only is it pretty accessible, this road is fairly even. I'm sure you can even do it in like a just your average little sedan or a crossover. There's nothing anything technical here. Just make sure you watch out for any sharp rocks, and also there was a warning that said you should watch out for railroad spikes, because some old railroad spikes might still be here. What's really nice though is you can see I'm so far off the ground here. It's in an elevated position, just where the old railroad used to be, so I think it's a really nice view of the entire desert. I can see pretty much everywhere around me. Well, okay, so
I just rode past the visitor center, which is right behind me, and I'm going to go to the East Grade Auto Tour route, which is just further down this road and then to the right. And pause the GoPro for now because the battery life on this is kind of garbage, and it's already at 50%, so I'm going to wait till I get to the routes before clicking it back on. And so yeah, that route kind of, you know, same as this one. It should be elevated, at least I'm hoping so. I'm hoping it's going to be kind of like an easier route, not washboard or anything like that. If it's washboard, I might not do it because I just don't want to deal with it. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
The Eastern Auto Tour route was a bit more interesting than the Western Auto Tour route. The Eastern Auto Tour route had a couple of stopping points where you can stop and see little plaques with a little bit of history about why that particular spot is important. The first spot I stopped at was the last cut. A cut, the way I understood it, is basically a cut in the earth so the railroad can have this nice even gradient to get up a hill or a slope. And I was surprised by how deep it was. It was like, boom, right there in the ground. It's like a little tiny canyon just carved right out. And I'm guessing that's where the train went through, because I'm just picturing, like, you're just riding along, all of a sudden you're surrounded by two cliff walls. But I guess that's a thing. And I'm not a railroad engineer, so I don't know how these things work, but I thought it was really cool to see this like giant cut in the earth. So checked it out, it looked really cool. Then it was time to move on to the next part.
Chinese Arch. Let's see. Okay, so this is the Chinese Arch, and it's right there in front of me, but real quick. So this arch is made out of limestone, and it probably formed, at least according to this little plaque here, it formed when there was an ancient Lake Bonneville here. So all of this, if you're not familiar with Utah's history, ancient history, really ancient history, this was all one giant salt lake called Lake Bonneville. And this was most likely the shore of it, or at least maybe like a little island that was in the middle of the lake. And this is a limestone arch, and it's called the Chinese Arch as a dedication to the thousands of Chinese workers that helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. So the arch, it's not man-made, it was formed by nature. However, it was named that to show, you know, as a kind of a dedication to the Chinese workers that helped build this part of America.
It wasn't long before the Eastern Auto Tour route came to an end, and once again I hit the sweet, sweet pavement, and turned east and headed back home.
Alright, so this brings us back to the main road. Make sure no one's behind me. This brings us back to the main road, and that way is the town of Corrine, I believe. And yeah, that is the direction I'm gonna head in. And yeah, it's only 4 o'clock. I got here around 1. Not a bad little weekend adventure to a place I've never really been to before. Yeah. So that was a good little rocky here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I am in the town of Corrine, and I figured this is a good spot to kind of end this little video, because this was a town along the Transcontinental Railroad, and this town had a bustling, huge economy of freight from stuff being shipped in from Montana. It was right next to Bear River, and the original idea was to have steamboats ship iron ore and other natural resources that came down from Idaho and Montana down Bear River to Salt Lake and then beyond. And yeah, in its heyday, there's a little plaque right here with a little history of the town. This town was just a big old bustling railroad town. It had tons of saloons, gambling, tons of people. It was a thriving community. Now, however, like a lot of these western towns, it's mainly surrounded by farms, small little quiet town, and yeah, that's about it. But this is where the railroad came through. So figured that this would be a good little spot to wrap up this video. So with that said, that concludes my little adventure to the Golden Spike National Historic Park to see a little piece of American history. And I hope you enjoyed the video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.